Hi and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you the books that I read in October, and I'm excited to go through these books with you. And so if you enjoy this type of content and other homeschool content, please remember to subscribe and let's talk about these books. Okay, so I feel like a failure this last month. I only made it through 3 books. I have 4 here, but I only made it through 3. I started the 4th one. I'll kind of talk about it when we get to that one because I'm still going to mention it a little bit because I didn't finish reading it. But I'd like to review it for you and give you my thoughts about it. And so we're gonna go through each of these books. I had a couple murder mysteries, so that was fun and different. And so let's start with the first book. So a couple months ago, I believe, in book club, we were discussing what to read for October, and people suggested a few different books. And we ended up reading Rebecca, which I reviewed last month, but then they also had suggested Raven Black, which I hadn't heard of before. And so I got that one as well, just because I wanted to read it. So it is a murder mystery, but it's not a scary murder mystery, which was kind of nice. I feel like a lot of the murder mysteries I've read are a little bit more like suspenseful. And so if you want something that's like super intense and like has your heart beating a million miles a minute, this probably isn't the book. But I still think that it was very, very well written. So it talks about a girl that was murdered, and then there was a murder like several years before that of another girl. And so they're wondering if they're related, if that was the same person. And there's this old man that lives in the area that they're like, it must be him. And they go through all the characters. So it has like the policeman, the deputy, whatever. I think this is taking place in England. I can't remember for sure. And so they're going through all the different people that it could be. And I feel like they outline it very well. They keep you kind of guessing, oh, it could be this person, but it could be this person. And then obviously they're like, here, it's this old man, like the crazy old man. It's obviously him. And you're all like, it's obviously not. You know, but I think it was very well written. I don't want to like tell you too much about it because I don't want to give it away. You know, and I want you to read it and have the surprise, but I thought it was very well written. And it's also, even though it's a thicker book, look at those words. I love big words. It was fairly easy to read. So I would definitely recommend this. Either, you know, if you have a book club, you could read it for an October book club, or just in general, I think it's a really good read. Okay, the next book I read was The Nature of Fragile Things, and that was for the book club for this month, for November. And I haven't had that book club yet. And so I don't know what everyone's thoughts are about this book, but I loved it. I loved this book. It was so good. It was one of those, once I got into it, I just like didn't want to put it down. So this Raven Black is a little bit, sorry, I'm like bouncing the camera, is a little bit slower paced. It's still interesting enough, like you want to read it, but this one is definitely a page turner that you don't want to put it down. It's also a murder mystery type of a book, but again, not in a crazy suspenseful sort of way where people are gonna like jump out at you or, you know, anything like that. It's just not like that. But it takes place in the early 1900s and about this girl. I'm just gonna basically tell you what it says on the back so that, again, I'm not giving stuff away. But she's an Irish immigrant. She was living in New York, and then saw an ad for a mail order bride, basically, in San Francisco. So she moves to San Francisco and marries this guy. You know, she gets off the train, they go to the courthouse and get married. And then, you know, they're married, I think for 18 months. He has a daughter. I think she's like 5. And so basically she's to be the mom to this daughter. And the relationship ends up not being what she expected. You know, she wasn't looking for love, didn't think necessarily it would be that, but then a whole bunch of other things start happening. And it all kind of comes together right as the earthquake happens. The San Francisco, like the huge earthquake that happens, and, you know, everything's on fire and all this different stuff. And so then it talks about kind of her journey with 2 other women, you know, with this earthquake and then after the earthquake, and trying to figure out everything that's been going on. And like I said, it's a murder mystery, but not in that, like, it's historical fiction. It has a variety of things going on, and it's just really, really good. I just loved it. My neighbor also was waiting for the audiobook for it, and she texted me the other day, she's like, I just got the audiobook and I can't stop listening to it. Like, she loved it too. So I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was really good. And just, it also, I didn't know a whole lot about the San Francisco earthquake. I knew something, like I'd heard about it, but it, you know, gives some of those details and talks a little bit about the history, which I always love as well. So I would recommend reading this book. Okay, so the next book I read was No Drama, Discipline. And I've mentioned a few other books from these authors. The Whole Brain Child is one of them. I can't remember at the moment what the other one is, but I reviewed it a few months ago, I believe. I really like their books. They're pretty easy to read and they have lots of pictures. So that also is nice because then it doesn't take as long to read. But I really enjoyed this one. I haven't read, it's been like a year and a half. I can't even remember when I read The Whole Brain Child, but I actually really loved this one. I think I liked it more, but I also have the background of the other books too. So I don't know if that made this one better. But talking about how it goes through this whole thing in the back, which I think it does this in The Whole Brain Child, and he's just going through it again. The authors are a man and a woman. But, and so it talks about the different parts of your brain. And I've explained this to my kids, so they'll come up and be like, their brain is like this and not like this. So it's like your downstairs brain is your thumb, which is like your brain stem, you know, it's that fight or flight, your emotions, kind of, you lose all logical thought because that happens in your upstairs brain, which is these fingers. And so when your upstairs brain gives your downstairs brain a hug and they're working together, that's the best. But when kids or adults get super emotional and just kind of lose it, you know, like they lose it, this is what happens, and this part of your brain is working by itself, and that doesn't usually end very well. Okay, it can be like crazy emotions all over the place. The brain works the best when they're working together. And so it goes through that here with pictures, and it's a very easy way to explain to kids. And so then my 5-year-old came up the other day, and I don't know if it was for my other daughter or what, but she's like, their brain is not like this, it is like this. And so I just thought it was cute. You know, and obviously we're not perfect, we don't understand it perfectly, and we still like yell and scream at each other, but I thought it was cute that she understood that at least a little bit. So he goes through some different scenarios, which I love that they give situations, because sometimes it's like, oh, I do this not so great situation, but I also don't know how to make it better. And so they give options for what it would look like doing it the correct way, and not, so with No Drama, Discipline, a lot of times, at least I feel like growing up and in our culture, I don't know, I feel like it's shifting sort of, but maybe swinging a little bit more permissive parenting than kind of finding its center with authoritarian, yes, authoritative, I always get confused. Anyways, so you want the mixture of both, right? You want that love and connection, but they still need to have boundaries. And so we kind of have swinged a little bit towards more permissive parenting. And so in here, it talks about when your kids lose it, when they get in trouble, when they're having a hard time, don't necessarily just send them right to their room or put them in a timeout or anything like that. So again, that kind of sounds like permissive parenting, but it's not, because you still have boundaries. The point is when kids lose it, right, they're right here in their brain stem, they need to connect. So that might look like just giving them a hug, you know, or rubbing them on the back, or just kind of sitting down with them for a second while they calm down. Or maybe they need to sit in their room and calm down for a second. Not necessarily like I'm sending you to your room because you're in trouble, but we both just need a second to try to calm down a little bit. And maybe they don't want you to like touch them or anything. So that might be the best thing, or you just kind of leave them for a second. And so that connecting is very, very important, because once they calm down, then you can bring in this thinking brain and it can work together with your downstairs brain. And you can logically go through the situation and be like, okay, what happened here? What can we do better next time? And you're working together with them. You know, hopefully they have some solutions. Okay, this wasn't an okay way to react to this, but what could you do next time? Or what do you think would be better? Or if you're feeling this way, what should we do? You know, when you're working through, and you can start when they're super small doing this so that they just get used to you doing it. And so that's kind of the point. And again, you're not being permissive. You still have these boundaries, you still have things that are okay and that are not okay, but you're connecting with them first and showing them that you love them no matter what. Because the image you give to your kids when you send them to their rooms is, I'm okay being around you when you're not throwing a fit, or when you don't have any problems, when you're being perfect, basically. And so when you're not being perfect, get out of my face, right? And I know all of us are like this. And that's something I love about this book, is that the authors say we're not perfect at this either. They give situations and stories in the back of times and they flipped their lids and did not respond in an appropriate way. So even experts that know these things inside and out still don't perfectly do them, which is refreshing and good to know, because we always are making mistakes. And I feel like growing up, and then when I first had kids, it was like, oh, kids need punishment, they need this, and they need to know who's in charge. And it's still important for them to know that you're the parent and you have boundaries and rules, but not in a way that's like, you know, it talks about sometimes like getting down below their level, like kneeling on the ground below their eye level, so that it's not an intimidating situation. I'm the parent, you will listen to me. And it wasn't until I was raising an autistic child. He's my oldest, but we didn't know for a long time because he's pretty high functioning. And so it was raising him that I was like, wait, he wants to do good. I can see it inside of him. Like his inner personality is wanting to obey, wanting to listen, but his brain is just not working with him at the moment. And again, my parenting is not perfect, not in any sort of way, okay? I'm not a patient person. It's very hard for me to be like, just chill out and let's think through this. I just want the problem to go away. But it has taught me how to be a better parent, because I was like, I know he wants to be good and his brain is just not developmentally there. And so we need to find a different solution than just always punishing him, because that's not going to work, and that makes him feel like he is a bad kid. And that has been very helpful for me in parenting the rest of my kids. And I'm just very grateful for that. So that's the same kind of idea here, is that kids, if they have the ability to be good, they generally are. A lot of times it's because developmentally they're not there yet, and teenagers either. So they still need our help, but they need to know it's like a loving, safe environment. We still have boundaries, we still have rules. I think that was one of my favorite quotes in here. Let me see where this is how I keep track of all my stuff. I used to write it on note cards, but then I'd lose the note card. So if it's written in the book, you know, unless I lose the book, but then what good is it anyway? And so I just love, this is very simple like quote, but it was one of my favorites. It says, you are not doing a child any favors when you remove boundaries from her life. Okay, so you can also connect by setting limits, is what this was talking. You like, don't overindulge your kids. You're not becoming a permissive parent. You're connecting and being loving, setting boundaries, and they understand those rules, and you're working together. And so I really love this book. I love all their books. I feel like they're very well laid out. They're very easy for basically anyone to understand, and you can apply what you think would work for your family. Okay, the last book that I sort of browsed through. It was right at the end of the month, and it has little words, guys. Like, look at these words. They're so small. And it was something we were reading for, I go to a book club for like these types of books. And then I also go to like a church group type of book club. So we study a whole bunch of Christianity type stuff. And so this was the book that was picked for this month, Stages of Faith. And we had that book club last week, and we all agreed the concept is good. The book is not. It's very extremely academic. And it's funny because in the beginning, the author was like, oh, I'm going to write this so that anybody can read it. I wanted a book out there so that anybody who has questions about this could understand it. And I was like, well, this is not the book because nobody can understand this. And so it's basically, there's 5 stages of faith, and that's what he's talking about in here. But I love how he does this, even though, again, it's so hard to read. I did not get through most of it. I skimmed a lot of it because it's just so difficult to read, but there's a lot of like summaries out there and other people that summarize these stages, so that's a lot easier to understand. But the first part of the book goes through development stages from like infancy to adulthood, and talks about like Erikson and I think Piaget, and I'm trying to remember who else he talks about. He talks about a few different like human development people and their different theories, and then goes into his faith like stages. And I feel like that made it make more sense for me, someone that studies human development, and probably for people out there. But I think I would have liked it better if I was taking like a class on it and someone was explaining it to me in more simple, relatable terms, because this is not that. So I think if you want a good discussion topic, if you do have like a Christian book club or even just a normal book club, this would be a really good book for that. But maybe don't read the book. Just look for the other things out there that explain the stages or simplify them, and then go discuss them, because we had a very, very good discussion about it. Okay, so those were the books I read and sort of read in October. I really enjoyed this last month's reading, so I hope November is just as good. And so if you have book suggestions for me, remember to link them down below because I love them, and give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.